In January of 2017, 4 days after a new president took office, I published a small book called USA Bible Prophecy. In it, I examined the 17th chapter of Ezekiel, a parable about two great eagles and a vine planted between them. I identified the first eagle, the one with variegated colors, as the United States: red, white, and blue. I identified the second great eagle as Russia, and I identified the east wind that would wither the vine as China. That interpretation was given to me at the start of Trump's first term. It described a warm relationship with Russia, a season of prosperity from trade, and then destruction when the east wind struck from the east. But during that first term, none of it fully activated. The Russia relationship was blocked by investigations and impeachment. The prosperity came through other channels. The China tariffs created friction, but not withering. The prophecy lingered. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3, the prophet writes that the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will certainly come and it will not delay. This is the principle of prophetic patience. What appears as failure to human eyes is precision in divine timing. Some prophecies must wait for the right king to carry them forward. Now in 2026, I conducted a life force experiment prayer-guided draw, and the verse that surfaced was Enoch 31, verse 1. It reads, "After these fragrant odors, as I looked towards the north over the mountains, I saw 7 mountains full of choice nard and fragrant trees, and cinnamon and pepper." When I read that verse, I immediately connected it to what I had written 9 years earlier in chapter 1 of USA Bible Prophecy. And the connections run far deeper than I first realized because they extend not only through that first book, but through all 4 of my prophetic books from that period. Let me walk you through what I see. Enoch looks toward the north and sees 7 mountains overflowing with trade wealth. Nard, cinnamon, pepper. These are not just fragrant trees in a heavenly landscape. These were the premier commodities of ancient commerce. In my reading of Ezekiel 17, I identified the United States as a land of trading and a city of merchants. If Trump is the king of the North, and by that I mean North America, not the traditional identification with Russia, then Enoch's 7 northern mountains full of tradable wealth are a portrait of the commercial abundance that defines this king's domain. Now follow what Enoch does next. After surveying the north's abundance, he does not go directly east. He passes through the Erythraean Sea region, the Red Sea and Persian Gulf corridor, the ancient Middle Eastern passage. Only after crossing that zone does he arrive at his Easter destination, the Garden of Righteousness. This matches the sequence I established across my other books. In my Iran Bible Prophecy, published in 2019, I corrected my earlier view and stated plainly, Iran comes into play first, then the China and North Korea conflict follows. The Middle East engagement is the transitional passage, not the final destination. Enoch's geographic journey and my prophetic sequence follow the same path. Now consider what is happening in the world today. Trump met Putin on a red carpet in Alaska in August 2025. Russia has pitched a $14 trillion trade partnership. The vine is bending toward the second eagle now in a way it never could during the first term. Meanwhile, China has weaponized its rare earth supply chain, is systematically selling off U.S. Treasury holdings, and tariffs between the two nations have escalated to 145%. The east wind is building strength. In the Middle East, the Iran war began in late February 2026. That transitional passage, the Erythraean corridor of Enoch's journey, is active right now. As I said, everything will shift to China when the Middle East winds down. The east wind of Ezekiel 17 does not blow during the Middle Eastern phase. It strikes after. In my North Korea Bible prophecy, I quoted Hosea 13, verse 15. Though he is fruitful among his kinship, an east wind will come. The wind of YHWH will come up from the uninhabited land, and his spring will become dry, and his fountain will be dried up. He will plunder the treasure of all precious vessels. I connected that fruitfulness among kinship to Trump's Eastern European heritage and the commerce with Russia that would come before the east wind. Enoch's 7 fragrant mountains are the picture of that fruitfulness. The draw shows you the before. Hosea shows you the after. But there is a deeper layer still, and this is what ties all four books together through the Enoch draw. Enoch sees 7 mountains of commercial abundance in the north. In my book, After China Strikes, I built extensively on Zechariah chapter 3, verse 9, where the stone set before Joshua the high priest has 7 eyes engraved upon it. I identified that stone as the Urim Thummim. 7 mountains of commercial wealth in the north. 7 eyes on the priestly stone of discernment. These are opposing sevens. One represents what the world sees and values. The other represents what God gives his priest to see through the world system. Enoch's journey moves from one 7 to the other, from the commercial mountains through the Middle Eastern passage, past the tree of knowledge where empires fall by grasping outside of covenant, and onward to the tree of life, which is reserved for the elect after the great judgment. And after China strikes, I trace the same arc. After the eagle's contest, after the east wind withers the vine, God himself plants the tender one on the high mountain. The Eliakim receives the priestly garments and the Urim Thummim. The branch of YHWH becomes beautiful and abundant for the escaped remnant. The restored Levitical priesthood begins operating under the authority of Melchizedek, of which Christ is the head. The 7 commercial mountains have fragrance, but the tree of life has surpassing fragrance. The nard and cinnamon and pepper are valuable, but they are not the final destination. So here is where we stand. I wrote 4 prophetic books between 2017 and 2019. They traced a sequence: commercial empire, covenant violation, the east wind, the Middle Eastern passage, and then restoration. All of it pointed to a timeline that had to wait for its appointed season. The prophecy lingered through the first term. Now, in 2026, every element is activating simultaneously. The Russia alliance, the China confrontation, the Iran passage, and a prayer-guided draw lands on Enoch 31, verse 1, a verse that sits at exactly the threshold between the northern mountains of abundance and the passage that leads to everything beyond. The vision was for an appointed time. It hastens toward the end and will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will certainly come. The question is no longer whether the prophecy will activate. The question is what comes after the east wind. And Scripture has already answered that. The tender one gets planted. The 7 eyes replace the 7 mountains. And the tree of life stands waiting in the garden of righteousness on the other side of the storm. This has been Dallas James with Heart's 2 Fathers Publishing and the Royal Levitical Priesthood Ministry. Stay watchful. The leaves are appearing on the tree.